Well, welcome so much to our first workshop here with Andi Pätzold, Senior Software Engineer at Contentful. We're super excited that you're all here to join us. And Andi, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, hello folks, welcome. Maybe we're jumping into a few slides to get started, but then later on we'll jump right into some code. As Katie already mentioned, we're gonna talk about the app framework today and how to get started with building your very first custom app for Contentful. So first about myself, I haven't shown up here before. My name is Andi, engineer at Contentful for 3.5 years now, and I've been working quite a bit on the app framework, building the SDKs around it and building quite a bit of the existing ecosystem there. I hosted this kind of workshop several times already, so we were educating people internally, but we also had some workshops with partners. But it has never been public, and it's always been a selected group. So I'm very excited to share everything that we've built to the public and to you folks on Twitch. Then, before we talk about what the app framework is, let's see what other people have built with the app framework before. When we enter Contentful, we have entries, we have content types, we can edit those, but when you get started, it's very sometimes limited to what you can do, and the app framework allows you to customize certain aspect of Contentful. For example, you want to have an entry where you can select a certain color, for example, for background, which might be especially interesting for Studio now. You can install an app that's offers a color picker where you can select colors, where you have some preset colors, and that way the editor doesn't have to remember the hex codes by heart, but they can just select the colors easily in here. Another option is for Google Analytics. You can add the Google Analytics app to your Contentful space, and then you see an additional widget on the sidebar of your entry, and you can see the stats of how your post goes, whether there's a lot of traffic, whether there's spin spikes, and how people are interested in it. So you can also that way you can also pull information from third-party services into Contentful and visualize those. Another option, many people are using Contentful to store information about certain products, but they also then have different tools where they actually sell those products, for example, Shopify. And in the early days, like before the app framework, you would need to remember the exact product ID, copy paste it around from Shopify into Contentful, and then always make sure that you also didn't have a typo. And it was also then hard to figure out like what this ID stands for. So with the Shopify app, you have that all integrated into Contentful, and you can just click a button, and then as you can see at the moment on your screen, you can just choose, press on the picture, press on the product that's coming from Shopify, and that way select a certain product ID, and that's then directly copied over into Contentful, and you don't have to remember all these IDs. Other small examples, especially now for today's audience, interesting, a JSON viewer, like everything you added within the Contentful web app is presented as a JSON to the outside. You can access it via APIs, and sometimes it's like takes a little extra work to send a request to Contentful to figure out the shape of the entry that you're currently editing. So also in our marketplace, there's a JSON viewer where you can just switch to a different tab, switch to a different view of the entry, and then see all the fields and the whole shape of the object, and can that way implement your website, for example, way faster. Then I think last but not least, already a while back we released the Graph API for Contentful, and we also have an app for that. And I think Stefan, who originally built that, even showed up in the chat right now. So happy to have you here. This app allows you to explore the whole Graph API from within Contentful, because like without that app, you would need to jump to code or use some external website, external website to inspect all the schemas and so on. And with this app, you can stay within Contentful. You don't have to switch websites. You don't have to do any research, but you can test your queries right within Contentful. So I showed you quite a bit of different locations that you can customize within Contentful, but the app framework itself is actually quite big, and over the time, more and more parts have been added to it. At the core, this is what we'll mostly work with today, is the app SDK, which is a JavaScript library that allows you to interact from the app with Contentful and allows you to integrate your app within the website. Then to visually integrate the app within the Contentful web app, we have Format 36. Format 36 is our design library, component library, where you have various components, and that way you can build your app and make that seamlessly integrate. So in some cases, people don't even know that a certain aspect of Contentful is an app, because you just use the same CSS, everything looks the same, and you can build your apps like that. Then switching over from just buttons over to field editors. Like every time you have an entry, you have a certain set of fields, and these fields we of course have native fields within Contentful. So for example, like a simple text input. And in order to build an app, you don't want to re-implement this functionality. So in order to do so, we will also get to this later on. You can install field editors, which are all open source, and that way copy the behavior of native elements of Contentful into your app and extend it in that way. Then additional libraries that we offer is for several open source libraries, simplifying the process for building your app. Often it means quite a lot of boilerplate, and we took that boilerplate, put it into some packages that you can simply install. We get to that all during today's workshop. Then, of course, you can interact with the CMA, the Contentful Management API. And last but not least, that's actually where we get started today, is Create Contentful App, or also called CCA, that allows you to bootstrap your app. Because in many cases, you don't really want to set up a new React project, think about all dependencies, and build all that boilerplate, and CCA helps you to do that. But before we jump into code, I want to show you what we're gonna build today. So when we jump onto my screen, I hope this is the moment where everything works smoothly. There we go. Excellent. That seems to work. I'll increase that size a bit, and please let me know if you can't read or things are too small. So what we're gonna build today is an app. So we will build an app that will show up within here, within custom apps. There I have it called it final app, because that's the goal we want to achieve today. And what this app does is, first up, we have a configuration button in here. So it's very simple. I'm not a designer. I just put some stuff on screen and hope that it works after that. What you can see in here is basically the list of my content types, and then can say that I want to assign the app to the certain content type or remove it by having this checkbox. So we're going to build that aspect of the app. But then we also have an editor-facing aspect for this app. In this case, I'll jump into one of my entries. And obviously, it's not working because it's a demo. 1 second. Let me assign that app. Here we go. Now, there we go. Now we see that things changed a bit. As I mentioned, we have these default field editors. So you can see this aspect here that looks as if it was native implemented by Contentful, but it actually, everything here is still your custom app. And what we built on top of that is we have a select button here. We can click on that, And because we're on the internet, we're gonna choose between a certain list of cat breeds. And what we can do now, instead of copying text around, we can just click on one of those, and then the field here gets auto-filled out. On top of that, besides the field and making it easier for people to enter information into that field, we also have a sidebar app here that, just for demo purposes, gives us some information about how many characters are currently entered in this field, and you can see it automatically updates in here. Cool. Then with that, I guess we get started with some coding. As mentioned, we don't want to set everything up from scratch and, I don't know, dig around TypeScript configurations and all that kind of stuff. For that reason, we have a project called Create Contentful App. That can be used to bootstrap your app to get the first boilerplate code out. And I'm not trying to use that now. So everything that you need to do is copy. I'm not sure if I could. I'm not on Twitch. Maybe Brittany can post that link into the Twitch. What you can do in here, you can simply copy this npx. So what it does, it tells npm to install some dependencies and then run create contentful app for you in your terminal. Thanks for posting that. So I'm here in my terminal. As you can see, I have nothing really set up. There's just two folders, one for backend app, we might get to that later on, and one for the final app that we've already seen. And to get started, we just say npx create contentful app. The app name we can call however you want. I just call it Twitch app because we're streaming on Twitch today. And then I press enter, and yes, hopefully this is also working for you. In your case, you might need to press Y. You might need to press Y to confirm that you want to install dependencies, because, like, as we all know, Node can be a pretty big, Node modules can be pretty big, so you have to confirm that. I already did it before, so I didn't have to confirm. And now we are here in an interactive way, in an interactive SLI that allows you to bootstrap the app. We can choose between different examples and different templates. In my case, I always enjoy working with Vite and TypeScript. So there's a template for that. We can therefore say, take a template here, and then there's a React and Vite, and I now just press enter. And now it's setting things up in the background. What it does, it goes to GitHub, copies some code over, and then makes some configuration changes, and now runs npm install. I hope my German internet doesn't die during that time and you can still hear me properly. We have a quite large range of different examples that you can get started with. As I said, I prefer using Vite and React, but some people maybe want to build things with Next.js, maybe some want to build things with Svelte or different libraries. And for that, we have, when we go to GitHub, Contentful Apps, you can select examples in here. And then you have a, just list of various different examples that you can get started from. As we can see, you have the Next.js app, we have something with Vue, we have with Vite. If you don't feel comfortable writing TypeScript, you can also choose JavaScript in here. And when using the CCA, doing this interactive mode, you are able to choose between all of those. And for example, those are also linked in one of the more recent documentations. For example, we have currently in an EAP about functions for apps, and in order to get started, you can simply clone from here and get started with the functions right away without thinking about all the boilerplate and all the setup. In our case, I copied over this Vite React, and hopefully, yes, hopefully you end up on a view that looks something like this, which says, hey, I successfully created a certain thing. In this case, it created the folder Twitch app. And then also it offers you some more options on how to move forward. In our case, we'll just jump into that folder. As you can see in here, we have quite a bit of setup. So we have an index HTML, we have the package JSON. But when we look at the whole thing within code, we can see that even in the source directory, we have locations where every single location within Contentful has its own file already, and we don't need to think about how to wire things up, how to set things up, but it's all done luckily for us. And all we need to do in order to get our app started is just say npm start, and yeah, Vite is quite quick at booting up, and then it says, hey, we have our app running on localhost 3000. Yeah, and normally when building a website, building things with Vite or Webpack, we would just say, hey, let's just go to a localhost 3000. But as you can see here, we run into an issue because the app framework is built in a way that it only works when it's being rendered within Contentful. Because now when I open this, now that I have this browser tab open, it doesn't know who am I, what permissions do I have, which endpoints to talk to. The app is kind of lost and can't be used in here. And when we look at our Contentful here, and then maybe open the dev tools, I put them on the right-hand side. We can inspect a little and see that in here, we actually, where is it? We have a label, we have an, we should, there we go, this one. In here, we see that the way how apps work within Contentful, it's actually iframes that embed page like our apps, like in our case, localhost, and that way we provide permissions to these apps, and the app can start working in here because it can then finally interact with the Contentful web app. Yeah, so this is basically how you bootstrap your app. Let's, I already have an app set up in here, which is hosted on Contentful, but we want to now create a new app, a second app, just for this workshop, which is hosted locally, so we can have a rapid development flow and don't need to upload things. So in order to do so, we need a new app definition. And here, just to get some, get the facts right, get the definitions right. How things work is you have an app definition. Those are stored on organization level. Those are scoped to organization level. And I think you, for free plans, you can have up to 10 different app definitions. And I think when you have paid plans, the amount of app definitions rises to a number that should definitely be enough for you. And every app definition kind of defines, yeah, elements like the name, where it's being rendered in, and various configurations for that app. So as you can see, we already have this final app in here. And in order to get started with a new app, let's select Create App, and then some, yeah, it already created an app definition for us. We can see in here, it doesn't have a name yet. Let's say we call it Twitch Workshop. If you want and you have too many different app definitions, you can also add a picture to it or select one of those. I don't know, I feel, let's just go for an, I don't know, orange circle. So we have something how we can figure out which app we're currently using. This could be, for example, used if you have staging apps, production apps, maybe you can give those different pictures or different colors, so you can really identify what you're currently editing. Now we have, we need to tell Contentful where to render this app from. In our case, because we are running things on localhost, we just have to enter localhost 3000 in here. In most cases, this URL is always checked for HTTPS, but with the exception of localhost. So even though it tells you, hey, you need to have HTTPS in here, we are still fine of using it that way. Then, as I showed you at the very beginning, the apps can be rendered in various different locations within Contentful. And now we need to specify where it can actually be rendered. Because what we want to avoid is that somebody, for example, assigns an app to a certain field, but the app doesn't support it and then crashes. So that would be a bad UX for all the users. So in here, we can really select very precisely on what the app is compatible in with, what we implemented and what we support. So for our case, as mentioned at the very beginning, we have a configuration screen. That's where we'll be able to list the existing content types, check those, and that way assign apps to them. Then we have the entry field as a location. In here, you can narrow down things even more, because in our case, we will save the name of a cat breed, but there's no point of saving the name of a cat breed into a Boolean field or even like locations or date. So we can narrow things down in here. And in our case, we just want to store things into short text. And on top of that, we also have the entry sidebar. Additional fields that we have is entry editor, and maybe can just enable it to show you where that would show up. There's also page location, which was the GraphQL playground that I showed you folks before. You can add that one, and you can also replace the whole home screen of Contentful. We're not going to do that now, but I just wanted to mention things. There's quite a bit of additional configurations, as you can see down there. There's something like about instance parameters. Up here, you can bundle security. Like there's quite a bit going on, but our focus for now is we want to get started developing. We want to write some code. So let's just save the app and yeah, let's think about the other aspects, the other parameters here later on when they become relevant. Now we might want to jump back into our space, and obviously when going into our entry, like nothing happened yet, because like we didn't tell Contentful that the app should be rendered in here. This is still the demo app that I created last week, and this is not what got bootstrapped. And also when we look into here, we can see that this iframe, where is it, is loading things from CTF Cloud, which is a way for people to host apps from Contentful. So it's not localhost. So in order to make our app show up in here, we can go to our content model. I don't know why I took this name, but I called my content type also content model. Select the content type in here. In your case, you can maybe you can also just do that. Create a new content type. Let's just call it content type because I'm bad with naming. Add a new field. In our case, we said that the app should be rendered as an short text. So what we do here is we select text, and this is then we are selecting cat breed. So we say cat breed and confirm all of that. Save it. So we have the content type created. Now we want to assign the app to a field and the sidebar, and maybe also add it to the entry editors. But when we, for example, switch to sidebars here, we see that our app doesn't yet show up. Like our app is called Twitch app or Twitch workshop, something like that. And it doesn't show up in here because we only created the app on organization level, but we haven't installed it into our space or into our environment yet. So in order to do so, we jump back out of content model, move into custom app. And in here, you can see we have one installed app, which is this final app, the one that I prepared for you folks. And then we have the Twitch workshop, which I just created. And we can now simply say install. select which environment do we want to install it in. I have a brand new space with on a free plan and don't have any environment, so I can't select anything from here. But I then say authorize app. Then we jump in this configuration step. We don't have any configuration yet, so we can somewhat skip this and simply say install to selected environment. So by having this install process, you and your organization can create a long list of hundreds of different apps, and then depending on your use case within your different spaces, within your different environments, you can select install the app to these specific spaces, to these specific environments, and you can also configure it for your specific spaces and environments. When we, for example, think about Shopify, we maybe have a staging Shopify and a production Shopify, and we can configure and install the app in both contentful spaces, but then configure them differently depending on which environment I'm currently in within Contentful. So after having things installed, we can jump to the content model up here. We have the content type. And I hope things auto refresh. Yes. And now we can see this additional entry down here. We can say we want to add the Twitch workshop to our sidebar. We can also position it in here. We also have the option in the fields where we can say edit. And at the very bottom, we can select our Twitch workshop app in here as well. I confirm that. And as a location that we are not going to implement, but just for demo purposes, I'll also add it to the entry editor. I put it there on the second location because, yeah, we're mostly going to end up being in the editor in here. Now I save this thing here. And the content types should be already set up for us. Now I created a second content type besides the existing one, so we also need to create a new entry. It's called content type, switching in here, and we see suddenly something looks different. What we have now is here, it seems like our app is welcoming us because it's now being rendered in the field location, it's being rendered in the sidebar location, and it's also being rendered here as an entry editor. And as you can see, when you implement an entry editor, you can really customize the way people are, your editors are entering data. There are some customers that have here a multi-column view with image pickers or even you can edit images in place here, so you can really do fancy things. This is unfortunately out of scope for the time that we have today. So let's jump into the editor, and maybe when we take a look at the inspector and look in here, we can see, hey, we are here in having an iframe, and it's rendering from localhost in here. So now all the development is just like any other app that you're building with Feed, any other app that you're building with Vue, and so on. So like, let's open our editor, for example. As I mentioned, for every single location that we have within Contentful, there's also a file in here. And we are currently looking at the field and the sidebar location. So here's sidebar, sidebar.tsx, and there's field.tsx. I select field in here, and we can already, let me adjust the size here a bit. We can already see that, yeah, here it says hello entry field component, and also here it says entry field component. And the great thing about today's web development is we can also just edit things in here and just say hello, and everything automatically updates. So it's not like I have to reinstall, re-upload, and everything, or recompile. It just hot reloads, and that way, it ideally speeds up all the development process by quite a bit. To get started with actual coding, we're not going to start in the field. We get there later on, but let's take a look at the sidebar. If you remember during the while I demoed what we're gonna build today, we were showing the number of characters that were entered within the field. And yeah, let's try building that. This part here, we're gonna get to that later on. We can simply remove. Excellent. I hope that I didn't does my audio work again? Excellent. If somebody knows why headphones sometimes shut up when I talk to mute when I talk too much, please reach out. I'm lost. Anyway, what I want to say is that we're gonna get started with the sidebar app, and we're not gonna take a look at the CMA just yet, but we're gonna take a look at and work with the SDK. So in here we have React. We use the so-called React Apps Toolkit that gives you some utilities, some hooks. And in our case, we use the hook called use SDK. And now we can simply say SDK dot. Things of breaking on the left-hand side, don't worry, that's just because it's invalid code at the moment. But in here you can see you have many options of things that you can do within your apps. For example, what we've seen before was that we were accessing SDK.IDs. What was it? I think app, which then simply renders the ID in here. But what we can also do, we can say we want to render the space and see the space ID. Just we can basically get the context where the app is currently running in. Then we have various other things that you can access. For example, we are now at the moment in a sidebar, so we also have a context about the current entry. So we can also access that and say sdk.entry. And in here we have, again, various methods that you can use. You can create tasks, you can publish, save, unpublish the entry. Those are all methods, but you can also just get, for example, this is. I think when I stringify that, never tested that, but then we can see that we have now the whole sys object of their entry being rendered in here. Let's make this a little prettier. Well, it doesn't work, but anyway. And that way you can, you have really access to quite a lot of things, and there's no real point of me going through all the different details in here. So maybe I can share this one in the chat as well. There's an app SDK reference documentation, and you can just open this and then browse and figure out what are the methods available, what are the methods that we want to use today. So in this case, today we'll probably take a look maybe at field, what is available here. We can see that here you can use set value to set the field. We can say on change value to get updates about certain fields and their values. And there's just a long list and ever growing, and we're adding more and more things to that. So also, if you think some methods should be added in there, feel free to always reach out to us, and we can maybe add it to a future release. What we want to do now is we only want to, basically get information about what's being entered in the field at the moment. There's kind of two different options that we could take here. One is we have an use effect within React that when the sidebar is mounted, we say we want to access the entry, and then we want to access the field. And then we can say which field ID we want to access, which is, and how did I call it? I think probably breed. And then we can, for example, get the value. And let's see whether that one is working. Let me. move this to the bottom again. We should be excellent. I called it obviously differently. Let's see. How did I call that field? Content type. Read. It should be working. Interesting. Oh, yeah, it is working correctly, but we just don't have any content in the field at the moment. That's why it's returning undefined. I was somewhat expecting an empty string, but we haven't entered anything yet because we don't have a way to enter things. But like this would be one approach of accessing the values. And in order to stay updated about the value of the field, we can say read dot on value changed. And that way we would pass a callback in here, which gets called every time somebody types into the field. That's one option. The other option is because we're in React, Contentful is also providing you with a package with this React Apps Toolkit package. And because this is such a common use case, we can simply use one of the hooks from React Apps Toolkit, which is called use field value. And that simplifies the whole process. All you do is put field value in field ID in here, and then I get returned an array. This is similar to how useState works when you use when you use React, where you have the value in here and set the set value method in here. And I'll just put this in here. Maybe do some formatting. What does it complain about? It doesn't know the type. So we pass in, say that this is a string. So now it's also properly typed. And let me tweak my setup for a second. I'll disable this here again. Refresh the page. What I just did was unassign the app because we didn't have any way to enter field. So this is a native editor again. And I can now say hello in here, and we can see on the right-hand side in the sidebar, things are automatically updating. And yeah, we can do, just do whatever we want with that information. I think in my demo, I just said I want to have the length and say that we have so many characters. But what, for example, some customers are doing is they are calculating the time how it would take for a person to read a certain article, or just figure out how many words the text contains. In this case, just because I don't want to make it too complex, I just count the number of characters, and you can see it's everything that we did was basically, we don't even need this use SDK. It's 2 lines of code and things are already automatically updating in here. If you want, we could also add a button in here, for example. Let me remove that one. And then say update, and to not only read information from here, but also, there we go, but also set the value of the field in here by just calling this set value that has been returned up here. In this case, I just say, I don't know, hello Twitch. Format things again to look a little prettier on the small screen. And when I click that one, it also then it works that the sidebar can update contents of the entry in here. That's already it for the sidebar basically. Which is in most cases, like it's I think the second most popular application that we have at Contentful, and in most cases it's really used for providing additional context, maybe providing some links, maybe the link of this entry to the real website, something like this. So we're also gonna keep it quite simple here. We also remove the additional button here just to have everything very small. So that's step 1. Now, what we can see, it's like things look a little ugly. We have here Twitch workshop and 12 characters, and then we have tons of white space, and then so we have to scroll down in order to access publish button or even like the versions, and so it still looks like a little out of place because things are so small, and also I don't know how I best do this, but we're gonna just say hello a couple of times, where you can also see that we now would end up with a scroll bar within the app, which breaks things a bit, like visually, and just looks ugly and doesn't look like it immediately integrates. For that reason, we have the so-called auto-resizer. When you want to use the SDK, for example, for Vue, there you can just say, let me quickly do this again in here. You can say SDK dot, where's it? App SDK. Then you can say Windows start auto-resizer, and that in the background triggers triggers a small mechanism that figures out how tall is the app, how much screen space does it require, and that way updates the iframe automatically. If you ever worked with iframes before, you might know from within an iframe, you can't change the iframe size, but that always has to be done by the parent, and therefore this auto-resizer is required. If you're into hooks and want to build everything with hooks, you can also simply say use auto-resizer, which then basically does the very same. Only difference here is like the auto-resizer in this case gets started when the component here is mounted, and then gets stopped again when the component is unmounted. So, which might also, depending on what you're building, might also be useful. So in some cases you might need an auto-resizer, some situations you don't. There's also some arguments that you can pass in, because absolute elements present absolutely on your screen a little difficult. If things don't quite work as you expect, for example, with drop downs of custom select elements, you can try passing absolute elements through, and that will add an additional step and hopefully make the app the right height for you. So in this case, it's only one line, and let's jump also back into the field location. We want to do the same in there as well. Just reassigning the app. Closing sidebar, we're not going to touch that today anymore, and jumping over to field.tsx, and in there we have some comments that are helpful, but I think I wrote them, so I don't need to read them. And we just put the auto-resizer in here, and we can also see here the height of the field now dramatically went down. And especially for fields, like I think you can have up to 50 fields within one entry, and if every field, I don't know, require 200 pixels of height, then you spend most day probably scrolling through things in here. So let's move over to the field. Let's remove some of the existing code in here and from here. And yeah, we want to build an input field here, because like we just had the native element, but let's just try re-implementing that basically within our app before we then move into the select button, which opens a dialog and so on. Similar to the sidebar location, in here we can also access the field values with this simple hook. So you use field value. As you remember, for field ID in the sidebar, I had to pass a value in, but because React Apps Toolkit, like because the App SDK knows that we're currently in a field, I don't even need to do that, which means that, again, less code to write, and we just say use field value. We have the value, we say we want to set the value in here. And now let's not get fancy at the beginning, but just say we want to have an input, a text. We want to render the value in here, and which is failing, but we changed it in a second. And then we also have an onChange event. So every time the user types into the field, this event gets triggered. And we update the value of the field. So we can say like this is nothing Contentful specific. That's like React specific, how you would do that, or even web browser specific, that you, in order to access the value of this native HTML element here, you just say that you want to access the value of the HTML target. Up here, again, it's complaining because use field value is compatible with all the different types of fields that we offer. And so this could be a Boolean, this could be a list of strings, but we are very sure that this app is only being ever used for short text. So it will always be a string or undefined. And so I can pass this generic type in here. Then let's get things prettied up a bit. And we can see that, yeah, things on the left-hand side already updated. And we can already, hello, folks. And things are automatically updating. That's how quick you can build your very first field app with Contentful. Like it's really not much code. Only issue I would say now is that looks a little out of place. Like we're used to different way of a different type of field editors. But I think, to get started, maybe even you have your own custom component library. This is all quite straightforward and quite quick to get your first app built. Now let's try using field editors, using the Contentful default field editors, and try basically pretending that we are native app, make it look as much as possible as if we are a native app. So what exists for that is also open source on our GitHub. Like there's quite a bit going on there. The field editors, yes. 1 second, I'm also gonna link that thing in the chat. So what this repo does is it provides various components that are all, I'm not sure why the styling here is very broken, but that's not Contentful. It provides a large list of various different editors, like for single line, for tags, for lists. They like various different components, and those look exactly like the ones that Contentful provides. In fact, the Contentful web app, like the source code powering all this app in here, is also consuming the field editors that are coming from here. So for UX wise, they will exactly work identical because under the hood, it's exactly the same code. And that just makes it super easy to replicate the behavior and move that into your custom app. In our case, we're gonna take a look at single line, and there we also, we are immediately presented with a line that we can use and install to our project. I open my terminal in here. Let's see, and I just install it in here. Takes a second, maybe my image quality goes down. Let's see. And we have that installed. Then in order to use it, it's always safe after an install to restart your app, just because like something node modules was changed, and Vite or Webpack just heavily cache those to make building as fast as possible. And hope that install also worked for all of you. And let's use this field editor. It's not, as you might have seen when looking at the documentation, it's fairly straightforward what you need to do. It's like you copy single line editor out here. Then you have a React component in here. Unfortunately, like we don't offer this kind of field editors or this deep integration for other frameworks, but because Contentful under the hood is all built with React, now we can put the single line editor in here, and obviously it starts shouting at you. but that's because we haven't passed all properties that were required. As you can see, it requires a field to be passed in. It requires locales to be passed in. And those we can simply take from the SDK and put them into this editor. So let's try putting the field in here. We have SDK.field. We just pipe the whole object in there. And we can use for locales. We can just say SDK.locales and also pipe that whole object in there. And now TypeScript is happy. Now Vite is happy. And when jumping back to our Contentful web app, we can see that, yeah, at least I'm happy. Everything looks as I would expect. And now it's really hard to even like know that this is a separate custom app because it just looks very native. And for example, these characters down here, this just comes with it automatically. Also the limit, the maximum amount of characters, those is automatically taken from your content model configuration, and it's just seamless integration. I think the only place where I, as a developer of this whole thing, see it, maybe here the shadows are not as perfect as they could be, but I guess we can ignore that as most things just seamlessly work. And I don't know. I need to write here. Whatever I write, like, yeah, things just work. It also automatically triggers this update in here. Sidebars automatically updated, and we have a very native experience for a field app. Cool. Then, if you remember what I showed you at the very beginning, the idea is that we have here, we want to select cat breeds, and at least I'm not a cat person, so I don't know how to type those. So I want to have them auto-completed for me, or even just having like a dialog that gives me a certain set of options of cat breeds where I can just click on one, and that automatically then gets entered into the field. So in order to do that, let's jump back in our code. We want to add a button. I think we don't have, do we have Forma installed? Let's see. Like instead of the native lowercase button, we can say a capital letter button. It says like it's trying to import from Forma 36 components. That's the design library that way looks very native and looks similar to buttons that you're used to within Contentful. I just say select in here, and you can see it's like very native appearance. Like could even, I don't know, color. Let's not just go off script. You can pass various things in here. I think variant is it primary, then have it blue. But there's also positive, and that way you can, for example, in your sidebar app, build your own custom publish button, and yeah, basically replicate existing behavior in here. I'm a developer. I just try keeping things to a very minimum. So I'll stay with select in here. But now we're in a field, but we want to open a dialog. And as I said, we are in an iframe, which means that everything that we have control over is when we inspect in here is happening within basically this blue box. But opening a dialog with that box, that would just look terrible. We could, of course, maybe increase temporarily the size of the iframe, but that doesn't feel native. For that reason, there's a somewhat hidden location that you might have come across before, but that you also can't explicitly enable because it's enabled everywhere and it's accessible from everywhere, which is a so-called dialog location. Let's see how we can open this. I just let's say that I have an event handler up here that I'm gonna pass into the button. So we have handle click, So every time I click, this code here gets executed. And now I can take a look at SDK. And as I said, I'm going to open my dialog. There's an SDK.dialogs. And there's a big selection of things that I can do. For example, I can have a small alert. Is that compatible? Let's see. Does it expects a message and maybe a title? Here we go. And now I can just click on here, and then even though I'm within an iframe, it opens a native modal and opens that full screen. You can also see the backdrop in here, and just provides a very native behavior. I think there's also several other things that you can do in here. Open a prompt where people can then enter text, but you can also automatically open a dialog where you can see then a list of all your entries, and that way get the IDs of certain entries into your field. That's, for example, when you have some references from one field to a different entry, you can use those. In our case, we're gonna say we wanna open current app. Reason why they like there's three methods that sound all very similar, which is open extension, open current app, and open current. This is more like legacy, and it's not recommended to use open extension. I'm not even sure where to block. And open current, just use open current app in here. The other two methods will be removed at some point. They just exist because before apps existed, there was a thing called extensions, and they build on top of the same SDK, so they are also available in here. Now I say open current app, and I can also here pass in various options. In my case, I want to pass in a title. Well, let's first try not passing a title to show you the reason why you pass a title. Now I click it, and you can see a dialog opens, but the dialog has an issue. It doesn't have a title, it doesn't have a close button, so we're now stuck. Like, I'm pressing escape, I'm clicking around, nothing happens. Need to refresh the page. So in order to prevent that, I can say I want to pass in a title, which, I don't know, select a cat breed, for example. Can pass that one in. What should close on escape? That would have also saved me. Same should close on overlay. Click, and when I now click it, we can see we have a select a cat breed. We have an X button here, which closes things again. You can also click outside or press escape to close it. Now, like, it's showing text in here, but I haven't even specified any text. Like, it just says hello dialog component, even though here, like, doesn't say that anywhere. And the reason for it, like, it's a location. It's very similar to field or sidebar or entry editor, and therefore also has its own file within our project. And I now jump into dialog.tsx. I can see here that's the text that we're currently reading here on screen. And in fact, when we look at the DOM in here, we can see this thing here is again an iframe, which is very similar to how the field is rendered. It's just now like the dialog location, which is being rendered in here, which also allows you to automatically share these, like the content of the dialog, between sidebar and field, because you just open the dialog and always the same code is being executed. And when I put things side to side, as we do in getting a more development mode again, we can see I can just say more in here, and it also automatically updates. So I think some apps that I've built, or some like non-contentful apps that I've built, they then had to like reopen the window for things to re-render. But no, this is like an iframe like all the rest. It continuously updates. It's automatically reloaded once you type things in here. So let's move some of the boilerplate that was already provided. And what we wanna do here is we wanna show a list of cat breeds. I can't come up with a list from top of my head. So what I'm gonna do, I hope that works with Twitch to share that, but we're gonna use the so-called cat API, which is an public, open, for free API that you can use, and that has an endpoint that allows you to query where is it, filter by breeds, which allows you to query cat breeds, and then we use that to display a long list. There's no point of like me going through detail on how this is implemented. I can copy paste the code into Twitch. I hope Twitch doesn't complain because I copy paste source code. Let's see. Let's see how that goes. So all it does, what I have implemented in here now is that I have a function called fetch breeds, which uses the fetch API to send a request to this breeds endpoint, and then there's gets a response. Then you have to parse it as JSON, returns that, and I also have some TypeScript interface with just ID, name, and description. There's in total probably 20 different properties on a certain breed, but that's not relevant for us today. We only care about the ID, the name, and the description. Also only gonna show those. Unfortunately, the cat API in the past changed a little bit, so it's not as easy as it was before to access pictures. So sorry, we won't show pictures. We're gonna stick to text here. Unfortunately, I think you have to pay in order to get those images. I can just imagine there were many people like us building our demos on top of that, so they got a little overloaded with requests without getting any money from that. So yeah, we have fetch breeds. Now this is basic React and how you would implement that. We need a state where we hold all the breeds that we already fetched. So I say we have breeds. We have a new state in here. By default, I just keep it let's keep it undefined as while it's loading. And once it loaded, it has a value, it has an array. So in here we can say what's undefined or that breed object in here. Then, in order to fetch things, we used a use effect. Just throw that in here. So it should only be on mount. So I'm not putting anything down here as a dependency. What we do in here is we say we want to fetch the breeds. As this returns a promise, it's a network request. We get the breeds in this callback in here. And I think we can even, should this work? Well, I'm not going to try it. We put this new breeds, and let's call them new breeds to not have duplicate variable names. And then we have an array of all the breeds from the API in here within that state. Then for rendering, we can, of course, create our own list with native HTML elements, but we can also utilize what Forma 36 provides. There's a so-called entity list. I think I haven't mentioned that, but in order to get an overview about Forma 36, I think it's f36.contentful.com. You can take a look here. We have components where we are also finding already our button. Yeah, I'm not gonna be, where is it? We have entity list. That's what we're gonna use now to display all the different breeds. There we go. There we have the button, so you can use that list of various components, all styled perfectly to neatly integrate with Contentful. Yeah, we're gonna use the entity list for this now. So we have an entity. We want to put an entity list in here. Then while things are loading, we can't show an list yet. So we say while the breeds are still loading, we want to return some indicator that simply shows that things are currently still loading. There's a so-called spinner that we can use, which is just, well, it's not spinning, but it's showing progress. So we can simply use that one. So let's jump into here and just say that we return a spinner. And once things have loaded, so in here then breeds is available, we can just say breeds.map. So we iterate over the whole array that we got returned from the API. We can say breed. As you might have seen before, there's already tried to autocomplete. There's besides entity list, there's also entity list item. So we'll use that one, and then there's some properties. Let's take a look at what those are. There's entity list. So you can see it has a title, a description, our breed is not published or doesn't have a content type, so we don't care about those. Like as you can see, it's very optimized for Contentful and maybe not for cats, but let's just use that. So we have a title. We can put breed.title. Breed.title is breed.name. Then we have description, which is breed.description. And because we are in React, we must also provide a key to every component that we are rendering. That's the reason why we have the ID here. So it also then is faster and quicker during re-renders. And now hopefully when I switch browser back to the browser and switching tabs, we can already see that we have an long list of all the breeds. The list is fairly small at the moment, which doesn't really help giving a great overview. So in order to make it bigger, we can jump back into the field component. I think in here there should be an option min height. Let's just say I have a full screen, so let's just say 800 pixels. I reopen it and now it takes the full screen space. I'm not quite sure if auto-resize would work. Probably it would explode because it's like we have quite a lot of breeds and my screen has a limit. So I'm just gonna set things to 800 or maybe 500 even to avoid overflowing. Now, we have a list of all the breeds. We can click on them, but nothing happens in there, unfortunately. There was a question. I can, what was your name? I can come back to your question later, or maybe if you wanna have fun, I can go into details for that later on. But there should be an example. Oh, if I remember, custom validation. I think I can go into detail about that one later. Depending on how much time I have, but you might want to take a look at that example, and there should be also some explanation on how to build a custom validation for your app. Let's see time-wise how we end up today. So we have a list of breeds. We want to click on it, and then we want to fill them in. So maybe the naive approach is we just jump back into dialog, and then we have an on click. Here, this is good. And then we have the SDK, but there's no SDK.entry. There's also no SDK.field in here. So it's not possible for a dialog to directly access a field. For this dialog, it's not possible to access the value of that field in here. That way, you depending on the location, you have different set of SDK APIs available, and this just doesn't exist on here. Also for some because they were under the hood would be very complicated and very easily all the dialogues would then have direct dependencies to fields, and by not having those dependencies, the code in most cases looks way cleaner. So in order to pass data around from the dialog to the field, all we can do is simply say, once we click on it, we want to close our dialog, which closes it, obviously. But when we look at the parameters, we can see, where is it? Here we go. We can see we can also pass data in there. So in order to do so, we can just say breed.name, just pass that as data. We could also pass through the whole breed object. And everything that's being passed in here is then forwarded to the field and can be consumed by the field. In my case, I only care about the name. I'm gonna pass that along. But keep in mind, like how things work under the hood. It's using post messages with iframes, so you can't do clever tricks like, I don't know, passing a function in here. That doesn't work. Like what you pass in here, you must be able to serialize that. Ideally only pass in a JSON, and the rest it will just crash. Also, it's not possible to pass React objects, and so stick to very raw data types and not use anything fancy on top of that. There was the question in the chat about using app hosting. I'm going to show that once we have this field ready. We're going to probably time-wise, we will have to skip a little on the config. I'll jump then to app hosting because we're currently running things on localhost, which doesn't work in production. I come to that later. So in here, we say SDK close, I pass in the name, and now we need to somehow get access to that value in here. And the way the SDK is built is when we have a little on here, open current app, we can see this is actually an async function that returns a promise which contains any value. And in order to work with an async function, we also need to make this one async. And now you can just await for this promise to resolve. And then, let's just see what is being returned in here. I just log data. Jumping back in here, let's make it a little bigger, so not so. When did I cut out? I'm not quite sure. What I wanted to show you in here, I think my audio should be working again. What happens here is you have excellent. What gets the promise contains the value that's been returned from here, and that way you interact between the field and the dialog. So we can send data back and forth. In this case, we want to use the returned data and set that as a value of our field. So we can simply say set value. We put in data. It's not even complaining TypeScript-wise. That's excellent. And now let's see what happens. I have nothing typed in here. Let me close this one again. I've nothing typed in there at the moment. I press select. I see a small loading spinner. Then I can scroll through here, select. I have no idea about cats. Just select the dragon one because it sounds fancy. And we can say we call it set value, and it's automatically showing up in here. It automatically shows you up here on the right hand side that we have 9 characters. And as you've seen, it also automatically saves a few seconds ago. And that's like maybe cat breed is just an example, but that's the way how you integrate third-party services with your contentful field editors. Like that's also exactly how, for example, the Shopify app works. Instead of selecting a field, a cat breed, just press select product, and you get listed a large list of all the products. You click on one, and then the product, the ID, the SKU gets copied into your code or into your contentful entry, and you don't have to manually type it. And yeah, it's just saves you a lot of work, a lot of copy pasting. You don't need to switch browser tabs. It all happens in here. And we can also see it overrides when I just take another cat. It also overrides things in here. Now we had the communication between field and the dialog in one way, but maybe I open this, click on select here, and I want to figure out what's the current breed that I have selected here, and also basically send data from the field to the dialog. That's possible by similar to the close, but by having so-called invocation parameters. And maybe Brittany, you can switch on the slides for a second to just walk us, thank you, walk us through different parameter types that exist. At the beginning, I mentioned once you install an app to a certain space environment, you can configure, for example, Shopify to work with the correct environment. That's the so-called installation environments. They are then scoped to the space environment, and they are different, different depending on the installation, but they are all then the same, independent from which kind of location you're using them for. They also don't have any fixed size, fixed shape, and the way you configure them is within the config location. Yeah, that's the installation. Then on top of that, we have instance parameters. Like we are now building a field app that's being used in one content type in one field. But you can imagine, like if you have a more complex app, you have more complex content model, you might want to change the behavior of your app, really depending on which content type and which field the app is currently assigned on. That's the instance parameters, like they really depend on what instance of that allocation we're currently running our app in. Those must be defined. We can get to that in a second. Defined within the app definition, and so they have a quite fixed. They have a quite fixed shape, and you can configure those within the content model. I'll show you that then. And last but not least is the invocation parameters. Those only exist for dialogues and page locations. For dialogues, they allow when opening a certain dialog to pass parameters through, pass things from the field to a dialog. And for page location, it allows you to get some information about the current URL and access that via via those invocation parameters. Those also don't have any defined shape, but as we are everything, whole Contentful is working on JSON API, they also must be JSON serializable. So I guess it's obvious, like you can't persist React elements or similar things into your parameters. Now, when jumping back onto my screen, we can take a look at how these different parameters are working. I'm gonna slightly skip over installation parameters. They are a little, well, let's see, slightly more complicated, but let's start with the invocation parameters. What you can do in here, you can see you have an additional field, property called parameters, and there I can now just pass in whatever I want. For example, I can pass the current value and set this as an invocation parameter. And now when moving to the dialog, I can access that parameter via sdk.parameters. And there we have the full list installation instance, but this time invocation, I can access that invocation parameter. Keep things simple, and I'm not gonna try to have any visual taste and render things in a pretty way. I just put things up here. And now we can see once we press, hello, press select in here, it automatically shows up in here. So we pass that data along as invocation parameters. Another, then the instance parameters, we have to first configure the shape. So when we jump in our app definition, we're not gonna press configure because that leads to the configuration of the installation parameters, but we first need to define the shape on app definition level. For that, we scroll to the very bottom, and you can see we can have instance parameter definitions. For example, I don't know what I'm gonna do use here. We can just imagine we'd not only be able to choose between a cat breeds, but cats or dogs. So we can say cat or dog, which is then like the name of the parameter. We can say what kind of type we have. Let's say here we have cat and dog, and that we configure. Yeah, we configure that parameter. We can make it required. Not gonna do that now. Just save and press save here as well. And now jumping back to our space. Whenever we assign the app to a certain field, to a certain sidebar, for example, here in the sidebar, we can now say change instance parameters. And here we now have the selection between cat and dog. And once I put that information here, everywhere within that sidebar in this case, I'd be able to, let's get the SDK here. I'm able to access that value from sdk.parameters.instance in here. And which adds another level of configuration that you can use in here. And last but not least, we are, I think, running out of time, so gonna mostly skip over that. Is doing on the config screen. There's quite a bit of boilerplate. It's quite complicated, but there's a place where you can set where you can during the installation set another object as the installation parameters that are applied for the whole space environment. Not gonna try this now because this is the most complex location, I'd say. But you could then access those via sdk.parameters.installation up here. Cool. That's, as I mentioned, we're mostly skipping over config screen because, as you've seen, it's really quite complex. I think what I'm gonna do after this workshop, I'll just publish on repository on GitHub, so you can also have access to all that code that we've written, and that also includes code about the config screen to get a basic understanding on how it works. Just to summarize what's possible in here, you on one hand can set parameters, so can set these installation parameters, but you can also define a so-called target state. What target state means is that when the app is installed, what's the expected state of the content types, of the content model, and that allows you to assign the app automatically to the sidebar, assign it automatically to entry editors, and assign it automatically to certain fields. And on top of that, you can even configure you can create content types, automatically assign it, and so prepare the whole space that the app is being installed in for the app. Because in our case, we assign the app to a field, to a short text, but in some other cases, there are more and more requirements that are coming on top. And for example, a specific shape of a content model, and you can that way not enforce it, but at least configure it for the users of the app. That's so much about code that actually then has a visual output. Just wanna follow up, come to a small aspect or rather big aspect of how you can also interact with Contentful within your apps. As you've seen, like everything happens within this SDK dot, and there's a list of various APIs. But if you've developed, I don't know, a server, like something on a server for Contentful or a script for Contentful, you probably haven't used the app SDK because that's only working in the browser, but you have used the Contentful Management API. And the great thing about apps is you can also access that and also use CMA as you are used to probably. So instead of use SDK, we can also say, well, it's not allowed anymore. You can either use CMA and then you get some warnings probably, or you simply say sdk.cma. That way, have access to really everything that's possible with the Contentful APIs. So for example, I can say cma dot entry dot, I don't know, get many. And then that way you can simply query the API and then get all these, get all entries. And the great thing here is like, this is the real CMA that you can also use outside of Contentful apps. So if you have a certain script that you're always running locally, but you want to just now copy it into Contentful and put it in a sidebar as a button, it's very straightforward. It's simply the same code under the hood. Only difference in here is the permission model is slightly different, because when you maybe we can jump back on the slides for a second. Thank you. When you were running apps in, I don't know, your script, and you had a personal access token, so your personal access token and the CMA then had access to everything that you as a user has access. But that's not the case for Contentful apps, because we installed an app only to a very specific space environment. So the app has only access to that specific space environment, and also in that space environment, everything that the current user has access to. So we try to limit apps, because like many people also like share apps and share them with others, and that also like limits the damage that those apps can do, and we are limiting the access in here. So some APIs might not work, or if you want to access a certain entry from a different space, from a different environment where the app is not installed in, that also wouldn't work, and you would get a permission denied error in here. But besides that, everything is available, and everything can be accessed in here. One thing to keep in mind, though, maybe we can jump back onto the editor. One thing to keep in mind, like when you have what we did before, we said sdk.field.setValue in order to update the value of a field. But what we could also do is cma.entry. What is it? Update, and that way update the field. I would always recommend going for the SDK approach, because that's really then a native integration into the web app. And what the CMA does, it sends a request to the server, and then only your web app reacts to that. So you might have some weird behaviors, that things might not update fast enough, or a little delayed, or you get a warning because things have been updated outside of your current session. So I'd always try to say sdk.field.setValue in order to update values. But you can use the other, it's mostly recommended to use all the other APIs for either querying entries, for just requesting data, or for updating data that can't be accessed with the SDK, with the app SDK. Now I'm gonna remove that, and there was the question about hosting the app, because have the whole thing running on localhost, and probably there's an XKCD for that. I can't ship my laptop. I can't put that onto the cloud. Everything is it's good that everything is running on localhost and nobody has access to it. But now if I want to show that to a colleague or just use it within the whole company, that wouldn't work. So one solution is you have, I don't know, a Netlify account, you publish things to there. But as you in many cases already have a contract with Contentful and also available, I think, for free customers, what you can do instead is you can go to your app definition, say edit app definition, and here we have the URL. But instead we can flick this button and then it just says, hey, to publish, like to upload your app, simply drag and drop it in here. So we're gonna try that. Let's, how do I do this best? I've here, let's end this again, and we just need to first build it, do a proper build, because previously we were in development mode. So it's now building the feed. Luckily, it's all successful. We can open that folder, just now in here. And now we can simply take the dist folder in here, drag and drop it in here. Then it's uploading. It's also offering us to add a certain comment. I don't know, initial version. That way you can later identify different versions and maybe also roll back to a version or figure out, yeah, basic version management of your app. Now it says it's not, it has been uploaded, but it's not active yet. For that, we first need to save it. And now that's all you need to do in order to run app hosting with Contentful. Now when we, I have my, as you might have seen, I stopped my local development server. So nothing is running on localhost, but I can jump into my space. Which one is it? The top one. And, oh, great demo effect. There we go. And everything's rendering. And this is not localhost. This is already hosted on Contentful, and it comes with your account, comes with it for free on top. So as you can see, it's not localhost anymore. It's the ctfcloud.net. So depending on how, like when you interact with your servers, you might wanna put this on a allow list here. Yeah, but that's how easy it is. And now my app is basically ready to be shipped to thousands of people. And that's, for example, how all our marketplace apps are hosted. When we jump back into the app definition, can take a look here. We see here under bundles. Well, it tells you here's previous bundles. In theory, you would see a full list. This is our first version, so we are not seeing any list, obviously. But you can also say we want to inspect the files to also get you some insight. It took a little to load because it's 1.3 megabytes at the moment, quite big. But yeah, that way you can inspect it. You can, if you, let's upload the same, maybe upload just the same thing again to pretend that we have a separate, a second version. Uploading second version. There we go. And now we can see it has active bundle and previous bundle. So in case you use this in production within your organization and you want to roll back, you could also say simply roll back, press save, and yeah, you have the previous version shipped to all your users again. The question was in the chat at the moment is about this things being public. Everything, like by default, all app definitions are private. So only your organization can access those, this code in here. Only everybody within your organization. In order, you can, if you're building a cool app and you want to share it with people, you can also make it public, but you would need to explicitly click here on sharing and then say share publicly. and only then other people can install that into their space and into their environments. So there's also no risk of not wanting to host things on Contentful. It's unless you click this button, it's everything stays private, and even when like somebody, for example, has installed your app and you has installed your app and you I don't know, delete your app definition, then it's also gone from their place. So they are not keeping a copy around, but things are automatic, like whatever you configure in this app definition here is automatically propagated to all the installers. At the moment, there's the question about whether the things are hosted in Europe. Not at the moment. Everything, like all the apps, are currently hosted, I think, on US East, US West, something like that. And that's also where all the files are currently located in. For Contentful itself, I think since end of last year, it's possible to get a Contentful version where all your entries are hosted within Europe, but that's currently not possible for the app code itself, unfortunately. Yeah, at the moment the app hosting only offers static hosting, so hosting for your front-end apps. But as you can imagine, with all these buttons, if you ever clicked around those, there's also back-end functionality available with Contentful. And I'd recommend to, let's say, keep your eyes open for upcoming releases. Maybe there is soon a way also to deploy some backend stuff onto Contentful, to also take that work away from you and integrate that within Contentful. I multiple times mentioned, where is it, that we have various apps on the marketplace. In order to access those, you can simply, if I don't get lost in my own space, you can simply click on Marketplace and then browse through those in here. And you can also go to contentful.com/marketplace and also take a look at those. And for several of those apps, like if you've seen an app and want to get inspired and like the app and maybe want to adopt it for your local project, you can go to github.com/contentful/apps. And in there, you can see various, I think so at least. Yeah, you can see various different apps that are available on that marketplace. And this is the exact source code that's also published on the marketplace. So if you're interested and want to understand how the Shopify app, well, it has been moved, how the Shopify app works, you can take a look at the code here and then, get inspired from that, understand it. Maybe even if you have a feature wish, you can also open a pull request in here. So this is all open source. Like, as you can see, it's quite a bit of apps, and they also that way like have an easier way for you to get started with your first app. Are there? That's I think I covered most of apps. Let me just look through my notes whether I've got anything. Yeah. If you build an app and think it's exciting, it provides a lot of value for yourself, but you also want to bring it to other people, maybe also charge people for it, you can reach out to us to get things on the marketplace. In order to do so, you go to the sharing tab in here, and then here it says, I think it should be this link. Is it contact us? Of course, I don't have the link available. Somewhere I haven't. You have a feature. You can. Yeah, publishing your app. This is the correct link. you can use that link and then reach out to us. So we're gonna then come back to you. We have a little chat about the app. We're gonna have a small review of the app, and that way we can, you can get your app on the marketplace. And it's not an automated process yet, but we try to make it as simple as possible. To get things out on marketplace. We have some review just to ensure that no app simply, I don't know, scrapes all entries and sends them to a third-party service. But once you pass that, you can, your app is available to basically the whole world and all Contentful users. Talking about validation, is a validation also possible with field type JSON? So what's not possible, maybe to start, what's not possible at the moment is to build a custom, there's no native way to build a custom validation where you then provide your own code and then then the publish button is enabled or disabled. But what does exist is when jumping into the link that I shared earlier, is it's hacky, but it works, so to say. You can build a custom entry validation by adding an additional field to your content type. So what you would do is, I hope that I can get that from top of my head. When you have a content type, you add an additional field, which, what did I say? What did I say in here? I wanna have it a text field, which I call it, I don't know, validation. When I don't fail typing, you can configure that. And then you can say that this field is only valid. Let's see what I said in there. This is only valid when it has the, where is it? Accepted only specific when it has the value true, and it's also a required field. So that way, yes, you will need to add an additional field to your content type. But what you can do now is, for example, add an sidebar app to your content type. And that sidebar app validates the current entry, checks whether it's valid or not. And if it's valid, it sets this validation field to true, which enables the publish button. And if it's invalid, it removes, sets it to false or to any other value, and that invalidates the whole entry again. It's something different than native validation, but it's kind of the current hack around the problem. As you can see, I can't publish it, and for an app you can also remove the whole editor in here, so it can only programmatically be set. But you could, for example, put a script in the sidebar that listens to a field, checks, I don't know, it must have a specific character length, and which then update that field and then get the publish button gets validated, or the publish button gets enabled and disabled. Obviously, this is only a front-end solution. So if you are working with the CMA, like with the API directly, this so it only works with the within the front end, but not with the API directly, because like in the API you can just, when you update the entry, you can just set it to true, and then no validation will happen. But yeah, it's a hacky approach, but I hope that this project here helps you a bit to try to document things around here a bit. And I think it's in Discord or in our community, it's a quite common pattern that you're using. Yes, you can, as mentioned, like when we, there's the question about whether you can configure all that during the installation. Like during installation, this config screen is being displayed. And in here, in this config screen, you have access to the CMA. So you can simply, let me also import that one. During the installation, say CMA dot, what do we need? Content type dot create. and I don't know what comes in here from top of my head, but you can then provide all the fields and all the different validations. So you can really prepare your content model in here for the for the validation and make all the required assignments, because especially if you have something like 100 content types, it can be quite some work to do all this manually. But that way you can really automate those steps and take work away from the people doing creating the content models. I think to slowly moving to an end, I want to maybe at least very briefly cover the backend side, the backend apps that exist. Today we only talked about front-end apps, so everything that's rendered within your browser, which has like permission somewhat limited to what the current user has access to. But it's also possible to build apps that run on a server, that run in the backend. If you're interested in that topic, maybe we can, I didn't discuss this with people before, but maybe we can even do a follow-up workshop on some backend apps. But what's available here as a feature set is, first up, you have so-called app events. Those are kind of webhooks, similar to webhooks. So every time your app is installed to a certain space environment, and then, for example, I can say, I want to subscribe to entry create, save, and whatever, then a webhook request is set to this URL in here. And if you have any backend functionality, for example, you want to automatically translate every entry that gets updated, you can build an app for that. Then we also have app actions that allow you to integrate in. Well, it allow you to integrate to two system functionalities of Contentful. One being entries, which I think I can just show HTTP bin. I like that website, so I just throw all traffic to there. When you then save it, what feature you receive is that when you are within your entries list and then you select an entry, you can see there's a new button here that showed up, which in this case is called entries, because that's how I called the app action. But that way you can select multiple entries, click this button, and once clicked, it also sends a request to the backend, and I don't know, you can do things with it. For example, publish that specific entry to Netlify, and this allows you to have some bulk functionality. Also, there's a different app action which allows you to process notifications. Like we have the workflows app that allows you to have like workflows on top of entries. Like often it's a multi-step process in order to get an entry published to the public. And you can add an action so that your app is at some step informed about this workflow step happening at the moment. So you can hook into that as well. On in most cases, like we, for example, have this implemented for Slack, but I think there might be some other tools also incoming soon, which means that like you can put in a Slack step into your process. So every time your workflow gets to a certain step, you receive a Slack message, for example, and you can hook into that. And you can also, I think this is barely used by anybody at the moment, you can also build a custom app action. And what this allows is that when you have this custom app action, other apps can call your apps. So at the moment, or before that, all apps were kind of standalone and worked only on their own. But using these custom app actions, apps can interact with each other. And we, for example, have a Slack app which implements this notification app action. And in your frontend app, you can simply say, Slack app, please send a notification to a specific channel, and it automatically happens. And otherwise, you would need to read the Slack documentation, think about where to store your tokens, think about how to authenticate various things. And now all you need to do is get to our marketplace, install the Stack app, and talk to this app action, use this app action, call that app action. And that way you can kind of compose various different apps together and make your own app more powerful with very limited code that you need to write. Last but not least, are two aspects about first aspect about security, identification, server side. The front-end apps always have permissions of the current user and the space they are installed in. You can create a key in here, and that allows a server to authenticate with Contentful, and they then have access to the whole space and then perform actions on it. And you could, for example, use one of those keys to authenticate with Contentful and then get an event via app events, and then, for example, automatically translate an entry for you, and have that as somewhat backend functionality running on your servers to get things secure, because we are talking about open endpoints, open APIs. You can use request verification that also adds an additional security layer on top. It works with some secrets and helps you verifying the request to avoid that anybody misuses your endpoints because they just found it randomly on the internet. As final thing, if you're interested, I briefly mentioned some hosted things upcoming, but there's also an EMP running at the moment that allows apps to basically not intercept, but provide additional data into your delivery API. So what we've built today, for example, what we've built with Shopify is we store the SKU in Contentful, which means that when you want to use that data within your website, you first get data from Contentful, then look at the SKU, and then send a request to Shopify. But these functions allow you to only send a request to Contentful, and that replaces the SKU with data from Shopify, and that all happens on Contentful servers, and that speeds up things on your side. You have to do one less request, and because it's part of those apps, also kind of comes for free when you're I'm not sure whether you have Shopify, but we definitely have Cloudinary where we provide that functionality, and that also simplifies then the way you consume the data. Yes. Are there any questions? Otherwise, I think this is all I have for you today. Seems like that's not the case. As I mentioned, I'll probably, I think, I'm not sure how, but somehow I will make the code that I wrote today available on GitHub, and then probably share it on Discord. If you have any questions, also throw them into Discord. I hope there will be me, but also other people that try to answer those. Yeah, and I think maybe we can jump on the slides again as a small outro, a small teaser for what's coming up soon. There will be George, also developer engineer at Contentful, who's gonna, it seems like share something about how to build apps with Contentful. I think there's been, I haven't even looked into this topic yet, but I think there's been some companies that power all their content, all for their apps with Contentful. And I think a very interesting topic coming up in 6 days, so next week. Will be exciting. Thanks, everyone. And as just shared, there's a small survey, so leave feedback if you want to have similar workshop, maybe on backend apps. Just let us know. Thank you.